Hey, Dennis Young here, podcast number 32. I hope all you're listening and subscribing. Special guest today, Mark Moran. I usually do music related podcasts, but today, since I'm from New Jersey, I have a very special guest with the most incredible magazine, Weird New Jersey, and it's a pleasure. Mark, nice meeting you. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Dennis. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course. I met you at that monster, looked like crypto conference there a few weeks
Yeah,
ago. That was kind of interesting.
yeah. It was really nice to get. Our magazine covers a lot of different weird things, as you might
I
imagine.
know.
And cryptozoological beasts being one of them. And this was a good place to get together with a bunch of people from that field. I mean, we do a lot of different events, and they all focus. They all have a pretty narrow focus. We go to a lot of paranormal conventions.
Right.
Which is basically people with interest in ghosts and the paranormal. And then this was sort of another aspect of what we do, which is crypto creatures, and of
Right,
which
right.
New Jersey has many.
I'm sure they do, but people don't realize that. So when did the magazine start? When did you guys start everything up with Weird New Jersey?
My partner Mark Sceurman started it early on in 1993, so we're in our 31st year now.
Wow.
And I mean, you wouldn't recognize when it first came out. It was really just putting it together on a typewriter and pasting up the pages, with rubber cement,
How
the way
about
we
that?
used to do. You have to remember, '93 was before the internet. It was really before digital print of any kind. Everything had to be manually laid out. Now, I'll give you a little example. This is what it actually looked like. It was on, uh, legal size paper, just
Oh,
because
how about that?
that's the paper he could steal from the office without getting caught, I guess. And
How
then
about that? That's funny.
you can see that the type is actually a typewritten pages. So
Right, right. I see that.
it was very primitive in the very beginning, and it gradually got a little bit more polished or professional as the years went on.
How many issues do you put out a year?
We've always put out two a year.
I see.
Sometimes people say, "Oh, I remember when it was monthly," and it's like, well, no, you don't, because it never was.
No, that's a lot of work.
It is pretty much just the two of us, so it's a manageable amount. Also, we didn't want to burn out the subject, or water it down, which
That
we would
makes
have to
sense.
do if we came out more frequently. So twice a year. You have to remember, this wasn't a living when we started. It was just a hobby. So we only would go out on the road like one day a week. So we couldn't really run a full-time magazine. But then, as it became more of an occupation, and we did devote almost all of our time to it. Twice a year was a good amount of time, and it actually allowed us a lot of time to do a number of other things, like when we got our first book contracts. We could still do the books and do the magazine at the same time. And at the same time, we were also shooting our show for the History Channel. So
Oh,
that takes
wow,
up
that's
a
right.
lot of time. So
Wow.
it was really, it was pretty frenetic there for a while, but we still managed to put out two issues of the magazine no matter what. We never missed a deadline.
Now, how do you find all these amazing weird stuff in New Jersey? Because I look through it every time it comes out, and it's just fascinating, all the wild, crazy stuff that goes on in the state.
Originally, we just started with stories that we were familiar with from our growing up, and we shared those. And then what happened was, when people started to get these, it was really a newsletter in its infancy.
Right.
It was just made on a copy machine. It wasn't printed,
How
so
about that?
people would just copy their own and hand them out to other people. So, if we might have only made 100 copies of it, but people bootleg thousands of that of
How
that
about that?
original thing. So, and what happened was that as it physically spread out from our home base here in Essex County, we started getting messages from all over the state. People leading us in strange directions. Oh,
Oh,
well, you should check out this. So, originally, before everybody had email, we used to get letters, written letters in the mail.
how about that?
We got a ton of mail, and sometimes it was just a sentence or two. Oh, you should see this gigantic weird thing in the woods down in Cumberland County. So there was just leads basically, and then we would sort of investigate. We were like investigative reporters traveling around the state and trying to figure out if these things really existed, number one, and if
Right,
they
right.
did, what story might be behind them, what history might be behind them, and that's what it was all about,
How
really.
about
Just
that? But
so
it seems like you always have new stories, so it seems like it never ends. There's so much things
Yeah,
in New
well,
Jersey.
there's always plenty of material,
I'm sure.
and since you only come out twice a year, you get to really filter it so that only the really good stuff, or the
Oh, I'm
cream rises
sure.
to the top, and that's like goes to the last phase. Before we go to press, we always have way too much material than we can fit into an issue. So at the final phase is really weeding through it and seeing what's really timely and what really is entertaining, and that's the stuff that makes the cut.
Now, do you do all the writing for this also, or do you have somebody do when you get a story or a picture, you go to a place, because the writing is fantastic. The
Thank you.
script
Well,
is really good.
we do the lion's share of the writing ourselves, but
Okay.
the people do contribute stories, and some of them are very well written, and then some of them, um, the author will admit that they're terribly written. But we said, no, that's all right. Send it in anyway. We'll clean it up. So,
Right, right.
we do have a girl named Joanne Austin who kind of helps us edit some of
Okay.
the more questionable grammar and spelling that people send in, and we can
That's
usually
it.
cobble that together into a cohesive story.
Well, the big thing I guess everybody knows about is the Jersey Devil. That's always the big story in New Jersey, but I'm sure there's other beasts and creatures out there in the woods
Yeah, I
that
mean that's
creep
really
around.
the tip of the iceberg is the Jersey Devil, and it's surprising that more people aren't familiar with it.
How about that?
I think I mean, I remember when they first named the hockey team the Jersey Devils, people were like, "What does that mean? Why the Jersey Devils? That's such an innocuous name." And
Right, right.
they didn't even realize, the Jersey Devil. It's a thing, and it's a very, now it's. I think most people know of it, especially here in Jersey,
Oh
and
yeah.
popular culture. They had an episode of um, uh, what was it? It's Mulder and Scully. What's the name of that show again? Yeah, they incorporated it. I can't believe that just slipped my
There's
mind.
one paranormal camera, I think, or it's one of those shows where they have all these weird events, and then everybody's plugging in. Oh, I think it's this, or it's one of those type of shows.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of speculation as to whether it's actually a flesh and blood creature, or whether it's just a legend. If it were a flesh and blood creature, you have to remember that the legend of the Jersey Devil goes all the way back to 1735, is when we first started the reported sightings of it. And for anyone who doesn't know, I'll just encapsulate this.
Sure.
There was a place in the Pine Barrens called Leeds Point. The Pine Barrens, if you're not in New Jersey, is a huge area, very sparsely populated, and it's sandy and it's full of pine trees. The story is that there was a woman who had 12 children, and she became pregnant. This is Mother Leeds. She became pregnant with a 13th child, and she was so upset about that she cursed it and said, "Let this one be born a devil." And after the baby was born, it seemed normal enough, but then all of a sudden it sprouted wings, bat-like wings, and a tail, and began to transform into this creature with a sort of a horse's head and kind of a hairy kangaroo body. And then it flew up through the chimney into the night, and it has been terrorizing the Pine Barrens ever since.
Wow.
So that's the origin story of the Jersey Devil, and people have been still, reported to this day, and some people believe very much so that it is, an actual flesh and blood beast.
You're like Bigfoot too. I'm sure there's a Bigfoot in New Jersey. I'm sure there's with so much that land that we don't populate. There must be these kind of creatures that.
Bigfoot is in New Jersey is very much just accepted as fact in the northwestern part of the state. It's they even have their own name for it, as they do in other parts of the country. If you're in Florida, they don't call it Bigfoot; they call it the skunk ape.
Right, Yeti up someplace else.
Yeah, exactly. Someplace else it might be a Yeti or there's a million different names. Here in New Jersey, in the northwest corner, people know it as the big red eye, which is described exactly the same as a Bigfoot. A tall, hairy, humanoid creature. But they call it that because of the red reflections in the eyes that people see when it's crossing the road through some remote area of the mountains up there.
Well, I think these creatures probably can jump into a different frequency or dimension. Maybe that's why they're never caught or never found. Maybe there's a footprint and all of a sudden it's gone. I think they're able to elude everybody by disappearing, shape-shifting into a different reality.
That is one school of thought on it, is that they're not actual creatures of this earth or this dimension. That's pretty out there, but who's to say? It's really, it's the imagination that makes these stories fly, and
that's true.
And then when you have some really hard to argue with eyewitness testimony, like we've had some great eyewitness accounts of the Jersey Devil that have been reported from down at the McGuire Air Force Base, the joint base of McGuire and Fort Dix in the Pine Barrens. These are military personnel. They're trained to observe things and to report details. And if they say they swear to see this thing crossing the road near the base in the middle of the night, who are we to say, to dispute them, we
don't know.
So we don't make any judgment calls like that. We're very objective, and we report the reports. We gather the testimony of people, and then we pass it on to our readers and leave it up to them to decide whether they want to believe it or not. And I'm sure some people believe it completely, and then there are others that are probably skeptics, but they still find it entertaining one way or the other.
Oh yeah. Now what are these abandoned buildings and abandoned things are really fascinating too, that you come across. You find a hospital or you find a building that's been like 50, 60 years, nothing there, but it's very unique.
Well, there's abandoned places are great, especially if there's a history. If there's not a history, it can still be really thrilling and chilling to
I'm
explore
sure.
some abandoned place, because you never know what you can find. And I'm not talking necessarily about ghosts or something. I'm talking about uh, squatters or
Oh
drug.
yeah, I'm
You
sure.
never know who's going to be in there, and it can be life threatening. In addition, they're often in very severe states of disrepair, so they can be life threatening for that reason as well. But if there's a history to it, it makes it even better.
Oh yeah.
Like
Imagine.
when we do abandoned insane asylums, like when Greystone in Morris Plains was abandoned, we could go into this massive Kirkbride complex they were basically cities unto themselves, where they would basically warehouse people with mental illnesses
Oh boy.
in the days before Thorazine and drugs like that. But we could actually go into Greystone, and we could find the room that Woody Guthrie stayed in.
Oh, about that.
The
Wow.
exact room that Woody was in for several years, as he was suffering from um, Huntington's, Parkinson's
Oh
disease.
wow. I didn't know that.
Um, and then there were other times, like the Trenton Psychiatric Hospital, where we went in. I mean, it has an incredibly bizarre and tragic history of one of the head doctors that had this feeling that mental illness came from infections in the body. So
Oh
he
boy.
would experiment on people by removing the parts of their organs.
Oh
He
my
pulled out
gosh.
he pulled
Wow.
out just about everybody's teeth, because he believed, oh, a cavity, an infection, that's going to lead to mental illness. So they were really horrific times.
Well,
And
the energy going in these places must be alone
oh
be
yeah,
it's got to
it's
be
intense.
really intense.
It
I
can be
couldn't
really
handle that. The energy of it's got to be
I mean,
like
there's also the factor that you might be, arrested at any moment,
right, right. Because you
or there
guys
could
go
be
down you goes
a
down
wild
yourself.
animal or something
Oh
roaming.
yeah.
You know,
Now you
so
go
like I
down
said,
there yourself, right, and take the pictures
oh
and
yeah, yeah. I take about 90% of the photos that
oh okay.
are in the magazine. Yeah, so
Wow.
and now everything's so multimedia, so you got to be in there longer, because you have to film it. You have to make a movie. You have to photograph it. You got to gather your facts for your story.
Right,
So you
right.
got to spend a lot of time in there. It's not just a grab and go kind of a thing.
Now you guys national now? Is the magazine all over the country? Is it
Well, we people elsewhere in the country don't necessarily aren't all that interested in New Jersey, but after we put out our first book
oh I
on,
remember that. Yep.
then Barnes and Noble asked us what we wanted to do next. So I said, well, let's cover the whole country.
Oh,
So
there you go. Wow.
we did the Weird US, and then that branched off into a Weird US series, which we wrote state books on about 35 different states in the union. And
Wow.
what we did was we worked with local authors from, well, you pick a state, Texas, let's say. And we found authors that were working there that could be our eyes and ears, basically.
Got it.
And they would send back their stories to us, and we would find photos to go along with them. They would send photos, and then we would edit the material and pass it on to the publisher. And that's how we did. Oh God, I mean, we have 35 or so states covered, but
Wow.
we also have a couple of national books, and
Fantastic.
specialty books like Weird Ghosts and Weird Civil War. It's a whole franchise of books that we've done in the series.
I'm sure. Have you been to Gettysburg at all? I mean, that's supposed to be a
Yeah,
place.
yeah, we've been out
Yeah.
to Gettysburg. We covered that in oh geez, we covered that in three books: the Ghosts book, the Civil War book, and the
Wow.
Pennsylvania book. So, and probably one of the U.S. books as well. So, yeah, we have quite a few great stories about Gettysburg.
I got to look that one up. I got to pick up that latest book on America. That is fantastic. You guys have really expanded. Now you're on television too, right? On
Yeah, well, we've been on television on and off over the years. Like I said, we had our first our own series on the History Channel called Weird US, and that was great to travel around the country and
I
investigate.
imagine.
Yeah, the stories, firsthand, and meet a lot of the people that, I mean, like the actual people who, saw the Mothman back in the day,
Right.
things like that. Um, and then, and now we're on the Travel Channel on a show called Paranormal Caught on Camera, and we're
That's
coming
what I heard. Right. I've seen that.
on that, and that's still on every week on Travel and Discovery Plus.
I think the Mothman is still seen. There's a lady I know, Marjorie Kay, out in Missouri, and she says that it's seen a lot out in the St. Louis area. This
Oh
big
yeah,
winged bat creature. So they have a lot of reports. She has a book out, and I think the Dog Man too, up in Wisconsin and
yeah,
Michigan.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
these are
one of our authors, she passed away a couple of years ago. Linda Godfrey.
oh yeah,
She wrote our weird Wisconsin and weird. Uh, what she did one other one. It's a blur now. Michigan. I'm sorry,
okay,
but she lived up in that area and she had published books on the Dog Man as well. I think that might have been the first time I had heard of the Dog Man was through her work because she became synonymous with it. And that's one of those things that isn't really. It's very local to that. Central Midwest, northern central Midwest area. We have our Jersey Devil. They have their
right, right.
and, Washington State has their Sasquatch. So
That's right.
everybody's got some kind of a cryptid creature, and it's not just
It's,
land animals. There are, all of the various sea monsters like
oh yeah,
Chippy
that's
and
true.
Champ and
Oh
Tessie
yeah,
and
I know Champ. Right.
so everybody's got a beast of some kind, and then there's also what we found interesting about the working with other states was that a lot of these themes of stories like these, especially with hauntings, they play out in similar ways. You'll have this legend of this white lady that appears in a specific spot, and what she looks like, and the descriptions are often very very similar, but like in we have the white lady of Branch Brook Park or the ghost of Annie's Road here in New Jersey, but in Illinois in Chicago they have Resurrection Mary, and the story is very much the same. The theme of this woman in a white dress who was killed either on her wedding night or the night of her prom, and it reappears in the site where she was tragically killed. But they always have their own name and they always have their own details that are
I'm
interesting,
sure.
and their own really local twist on the story that makes it really fascinating to compare and contrast them.
Well, some of these ghosts are like got a tape recorder loop. That
Yeah,
energy never leaves there, and they're just seen,
right.
and that's it. At a certain time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard about the Lincoln train on a certain day on I think it's the day of his assassination. There's a train that people have seen
Uh-huh.
with him on it, his funeral train. So there's so many stories. It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
endless.
It's always good too when there's something concrete that
Right,
we're more than just a magazine of stories. It's actually technically a travel guide. So like
that's
speaking
great.
of these white women ghosts, it's uh, like Annie's Road. There for years, every year, someone would uh, lay down red paint, streaking along the side of the road where she was supposedly struck by a car. Uh,
Right.
so you could go and you could see that blood, the blood
Oh
stain,
wow.
blood,
Huh.
and with Resurrection Mary in Chicago, there are what appear to be. Um, uh, Handprints melted into the iron bars of the Resurrection Cemetery there.
Oh, wow.
So
Huh.
it's the legend is that that was her handprints got melted into the bars of this cemetery, and that's why she's Resurrection Mary.
Wow, that's
So it's
fascinating.
nice to be able to go and actually see these things for yourself, and it's kind of like touching a piece of not necessarily history, but folklore history.
Oh, yeah. Now, have you experienced anything on all your years at these sites, or saw a ghost or a UFO, or any type of crypto?
Can't say that I'm lucky enough to have seen a UFO, but I also don't spend as much time looking at the skies that
Got
a lot
it.
of UFO witnesses do. I mean, especially when on our TV show, there are people that seem to be watching the skies all the time, and they come up with these
Right.
video captures of some really anomalous stuff.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I'm usually not sitting out looking at the stars at night, so I haven't been privy to that experience. But and also with the we're not like with ghosts, we're not really ghost hunters as much as we are ghost documentarians.
Got it.
We're going out to find the legend of the ghost, tell the story, perhaps find a little history to why there might be a ghost
Right.
haunting such a place. And sometimes there's good logical reasons why a ghost might be in a particular place. There might have been a very noteworthy death in a very at some point in history.
Right.
So and then also gathering eyewitness testimony to back up the story.
Oh,
It's so that
that's
people
important.
know that it isn't just a made up tale. That there are actually living people who swear to this. Actually having firsthand accounts of that. So if you can get all those things bundled up together in one article, you've got all of the. That's a recipe for a great story.
Well, what you do great is you let the reader actually go themselves, and now they know the backstory from you and photos. So then they go themselves and see,
Right.
wow, it's really something happening here. Is this gonna happen? So that's what makes your magazine really
Yeah,
work.
and that's exactly what people do, and sometimes that their experience adds to the story because as the magazine rolls on, we don't just write a story and then we're done with it. What happens
Right,
is people go to these places, they have their own experiences, whether it be the Devil's Tree or Clinton Road or some legendary
right.
street like Shades of Death Road. And then they go and they have these harrowing experiences, and they report them back to us, and then we update the story, with their letter, and then so it's like layers of an onion.
Oh yeah,
As the magazine rolls on, we're always introducing new tales, but we're always revisiting old ones with updates and personal experiences.
that's great. Well, this has been fantastic, Mark. I really appreciate you coming on. And now, but what's the best way to reach you through your website? Would that be the
Yeah, the website is the gateway, if you will.
okay?
Um, and that's weirdnj.com, and from there you can get to all of our daily posts on like social media. We're on all the social medias that you can find all those right at the
Oh, I'm
top.
sure.
But there's
And
there's hundreds of stories on the website, where you get the whole story.
okay,
But it's funny is I say there are hundreds of stories, and it's still, maybe 1/100th of what we've actually published.
wow, that's
When
amazing.
when you do it, we're on uh, episode issue 62 now. Actually,
Wow,
working on 63. So you multiply a few hundred stories in each of those, times 63, and that's a lot of
that
material.
is. Now,
So
now when
we
did
don't We don't
Go
put it
ahead.
all on the website because it would just
No.
be too cumbersome, but people get a good flavor for it there, and if they want to get on the mailing list, they can do that.
And where can you find the books? At Barnes and Noble or other
Barnes and
places?
Noble, all the New Jersey Barnes and Nobles carry
Okay.
the magazine. Barnes and Noble actually published the book, so
Okay.
if they're probably your best bet for finding the books. Some of them we can offer through the website, but they're getting harder to find. Some of the books came out 15 years ago, so
Wow.
they're not all still in print. So, but you can always find one used, I'm sure.
I got to get on your mailing list, that's for sure, and pick
Please
up the
do.
books. It was so nice meeting you too. I mean, I was so surprised that the actual authors were at the event. Sometimes you just get people at these things that are just working for a company, and there you guys
Yeah,
were. It
no,
was
no,
like
no.
so great.
We don't have employees like that.
Yeah,
we
but it's
just
great.
Well, it's also we love to get out there and meet people, and we usually come away with a new story. Like, were you there when were doing that great play about the Jersey Devil, and the guy came out in the great
Oh
Jersey Devil
yeah, that
costume?
outfit, right? The costume.
Just fantastic, and
It
that was
was.
not on my radar that they were doing that. So it was really nice to meet the people doing that, and sort of come up to speed on what they were doing. So people are doing some really creative stuff out there, and
Right.
this is events that we do are a chance for us to get to know them and be more familiar with their work, and vice versa.
Is that on the web too? Like the events you're going to be at and where you're going to be?
Yeah, well, we
Okay.
have an upcoming events link, but there's probably nothing there right now
Okay.
because we only really go out and do that stuff when we have a new issue out, and that's in the spring and the fall.
Okay.
And that's really, oddly enough, that coincides very nicely with most events that you go to are either in the spring or the fall. In the
Know
spring,
about
people
that.
can't wait to get out of the house, so there's a lot of
Right.
it.
Right.
And then in the fall, after the summer starts to cool off and people want to get back out into the world and out of the air conditioning,
Right. Right.
there's a
Exactly.
lot of events then too. So that's really when we make the rounds, and we come out from hiding, and then we kind of lay low during the summer and winter and work on the next issue. That's when we can really get the nose to the grindstone and put that stuff together again.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. This has been fantastic. Me being a Jersey resident and meeting you was really great. And you're doing a great job with this. It's always fascinating. Every issue and now the books. So I want to thank you again and good luck in the future with this. And I'm going to try to get on your mailing list for sure.
Okay, thank you very
Okay,
much.
Mark. Nice to
Good
meet
talking with
you.
you.
Have a great day. Thanks
You too.
again. See you. Bye.
Bye.